talking about Helstrom Season 1. Now, this may actually be a surprise to some people. This is actually based off a Marvel comic book. There was a Marvel comic book called Son of Satan, and you had Daimon Helstrom as our kind of actually a hero, and a little bit later on he was introduced to his sister, Satana. Now, both of these characters feature in this TV show, and they are played by Tom Austen and Sidney Lemon. So what we have here is we have a kind of demonic possession style TV show, similar in a way to the show Outcast in a lot of ways. This doesn't actually feel like a superhero or Marvel show. In fact, it's the last Marvel show to be kind of produced by Jeff Loeb, who was the kind of the TV producer. Kevin Feige's obviously now in charge of all the kind of the TV products, so it's kind of, you might say it's loosely connected to the MCU, but who knows? I mean, Marvel TV shows have not had the best track record. They've all kind of like been tangentially attached to the kind of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they have all been cancelled. Only Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to kind of have any type of real conclusion, because it had kind of enough time to really make that. So it doesn't bode well, particularly for Helstrom having a kind of a season 2, and this is the problem really with TV shows in general. I find I tend to watch less TV shows than I do films, because I always find I watch TV shows and more often than not they get cancelled, so it's kind of just like a waste of time, and I feel like my investment is just not worth it. And unless you get kind of like a Game of Thrones or a Walking Dead where it's so popular, you'll know that they'll kind of be seen through to the end. But a lot of the time, you kind of be left high and dry, and this is maybe why I have a problem myself with really getting too invested in TV. Now this one, the tone of it is, I guess you would say, kind of a PG-13. It's certainly darker than, I would say, pretty much every other Marvel TV show, but it never goes too far in kind of like graphic territory like maybe you would do, even in things like Game of Thrones and that sort of thing. To give you an idea about what I mean, they'll say shit lots, but they'll never drop an F-bomb and things like that. You will see kind of like blood and people getting killed and some reasonable violence and horror, but not anything too gratuitous. So what is the story here? Well, it focuses on the Helstrom siblings. Daimon, who is kind of our central character, really. He is kind of the original kind of the comic character, very different in the comics. And his sister, Ana, Satana in the comics. And they are essentially half demon. Their father, in the movie he's described as a serial killer, but we kind of learn ultimately he may well be something a little bit more than that. And they have kind of powers, they're estranged. And their mother is possessed by another demon, and she's essentially been in a mental institution for the last 20 years. However, it seems like the demonic forces are rising, and the father may well be trying to come back from the underworld to claim his place. And it's up to Daimon and Ana to kind of put their differences aside to try and rally together with the help of some allies and try and defeat this rising tide of demonic insurgents. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the series to find out. But like I've said, I'm cautious about getting too optimistic with seeing a season 2, and the series does end on a cliffhanger. And this is the problem I find with TV shows, is that they spend a lot of time trying to kind of like, set up season 2, and I'll be honest, more often than not, it doesn't happen. Or the next season. No, not season 2, but the next season. And it would have been nice maybe for shows maybe to be a bit more self-contained for that. I know, though, what they do, because they obviously want you to come back, but it's very annoying, and it's kind of what puts me off TV shows themselves. That's one of my critiques with this show, is that it does really set itself up for a season 2, and I highly doubt that we're going to see that. But the show is actually quite good in a lot of ways. Like I've said, it does have a darker tone. Certainly, I would say the most adult of the kind of the Marvel TV shows that we've kind of seen before. Gone are the kind of like the quippy jokes and the kind of the cheesiness from kind of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that sort of thing. Only really Runaways, to a degree, I would say, is really a comparison, and this is darker than Runaways. But it has certainly a gothic horror feel to it. There are, you know, a reasonable amount of kind of special effects here of mostly good quality. There's a couple of ones maybe that aren't so good, and there are some kind of like, there's some gory deaths, things like that. Some you know, some fairly inventive, demonic kind of designs here and stuff like that. The characters are quite interesting because neither Ana or Daimon, or Damien, depending on when the series wants to say it, are actually both fairly unlikable characters. And which is a flaw, I suppose, but at the same time it makes them somewhat intriguing. Especially Ana to a degree, because she's kind of so standoffish and such a kind of a different character that you would normally have as a kind of a female lead. I mean, she's like, you know, the real bitchy character, if that makes sense. But it kind of makes her fun, although somewhat unlikable. There are a few moments where she does kind of soften. But I actually kind of quite liked her character. I always liked her fashion sense, which sounds a weird thing, but she's always like super kind of dressed up with a very kind of like power haircut and things like that. I actually found her probably the most interesting sort of character on the show. Daimon they soften him a little bit, but he's still a dick in his own words, which is quite fun. He has this kind of somewhat of a relationship with this kind of novice nun. You can kind of see where it's going. And that maybe is the critique. I don't feel this series really offers that much in the way of surprises. I feel it kind of... it is fairly obvious what's going on. And you do feel that maybe it kind of is trying to stretch out the 10 series run by having maybe too many sort of plot lines. There's a plot line involving this kind of group called the Blood, which are kind of good guys. They're kind of like the human, like a human team of demon kind of watchers and slayers and things like that. And to me, it just seemed a little silly in a lot of ways, those scenes and that kind of storyline. I think this series would have been better maybe having 8 episodes and having a little bit more of a concise story. But, you know, it's certainly interesting, and it kept me, you know, it kept me engaged, maybe not enthralled, but certainly engaged through the whole kind of season. And as much as I would like to see a season 2, I just can't help but feel I don't want to kind of invest too much in it, because I very much doubt it's going to be there. I like the kind of the different style of tone that this series has compared to at least the other Marvel shows. And like I've said, it really is a companion piece to the TV show Outcast, which was, again, another short-lived kind of TV show about possession, and feels a lot like that. I mean, in regards to is it connected to the MCU, it's one of these things that could be or it couldn't be. We do see one Easter egg with the kind of the Roxxon label. If you're a Marvel head, you may know what that is, and that does kind of connect with other things in the MCU. So, you know, very, very tangentially, you could say it's kind of obviously connected. But again, it doesn't reference anything else in the kind of the universe. So who knows at this point? Until they kind of redo the characters with, you know, under Kevin Feige's guide, you know, it's impossible to say whether you should really count this as an MCU. I kind of will until they kind of do it otherwise, really. It's the same thing as like with Daredevil, for example. There's always, you know, are they going to redo Daredevil? At the moment, he's kind of in the MCU, but once they redo him, you can kind of forget about those Netflix TV series. So as you watch it, I think you could enjoy this, certainly for not being a Marvel fan, because it's so, you know, it's so far away from the source material and the kind of the Marvel as a whole. It more plays like a horror show. They've even kind of got rid of the Marvel kind of logo on it, really. It only really says it as a kind of a Marvel production, but there's no Marvel fanfare or anything like that with it. So it plays a lot more like a horror show than a kind of a superhero kind of related show. So if you're a horror fan, I would say check it out, because there's enough here, I think, to make for some interesting viewing. And if you're a fan of the kind of the possession sort of style horror films, then this is kind of more of the same, although I don't think it really offers anything particularly new. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I did enjoy it. I don't think it was, you know, groundbreaking in any way. and maybe kind of it kind of drops one of the main storylines, obviously, to try and pick up in season 2, which I wish that it didn't do. But I understand why the showrunners would do that. But kind of like I say, the major kind of driving force for this season, it's kind of dropped and then picked up right at the very end for a teaser season 2. Whether we get that or not, remains to be seen. But as it stands, it's a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.